Right now on Real Estate Divas, we are going to be telling you the best way to quickly estimate your electrical repairs when you go to a property for the first time and you're looking to either buy it as a wholesale or flip it if you are a retail flipper. We'll get into it right after this. Hello, today on Real Estate Divas, we are going to be discussing how to quickly estimate your electrical repairs when you go to a house to look to see if you want to buy it. I am KRISTIN GERST with Capricorn Mortgage Investments, and my lovely co-host is
JERLEIGH Thompson with Texel Real Estate and Real Estate Reformation. So you're going to a house and you know it's an older home, it's going to need some electrical. We're not talking about refitting the entire electrical system, but there are some key elements that you want to watch out for, or you at least want to be aware of so that you've got it in your head when you're thinking of that repair cost. The biggest one that we all know of is the FedPACs, the Federal Pacific Electrical Boxes.
These are your breaker boxes, and these were discontinued as a fire hazard, so they will not pass code.
They definitely won't pass code, and you can usually find them, like whereas now in newer homes, all those electrical boxes are out in the garage. You know, they're out, or they're exterior, something like that. They're not typically inside.
Right, and so this is like this is going to be pre-1980s build, I think.
Oh yeah.
It's
going to be.
I know my own house personally currently has one.
Okay.
And so you always hear, oh, these are fire hazards, blah, 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 blah. Maybe, maybe not. It's how the breakers work. So it's a brand new box and all brand new breakers to go in that, because the breakers don't always trip, apparently.
That means an overload on the system. An overload on the system, there's some other issues out there. And one of the things that, like the first place that you look for them, if you're going to an older home, like 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s, something like that, and you see, check the closets is basically what I'm saying. Check the closets for breaker boxes if you do not see it in the garage or laundry room or something like that. Because if it's in a closet, you're probably looking at a FedPAC. If you're not looking at a FedPAC, then you're probably looking at some of the others that are very similar that have their own freaking issues. You know, I mean, they've got the, the Senko GTE. I'm not an electrician. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but it's spelled with a Z, Zenko, and the Sylvania.
Yeah.
But both of those are issues as well, because
if you go to a house and you're looking to buy this thing and you find the breaker box and you open it up and you don't know what you're looking at, and it is obviously antique, meaning, I mean, we're talking older than 40 years old, you need to budget this in and replace it, because it's not going to pass code.
It's not going to pass code. Especially if you're the flipper and you're going in there and I want to flip this property, and you're thinking, I want to spend the money on the pretty stuff. I don't want to do this. Well, guess what? When that buyer comes in there and they do an inspection, that is going to be the first red line that inspector makes, is this thing's a fire hazard. So it doesn't matter if you sit there and say, I've never had a problem with it before. The old owners never had a problem with it. It does just fine. We've had it checked out. It's fine. It doesn't matter that it's in the closet. Just being in the closet is a fire hazard, because you're surrounding it typically with a lot of flammable stuff like clothing and, boxes or whatever it is you're putting in that closet. So budget it is all I have to say. Is definitely that needs to be in your budget. So when you're thinking about it being in your budget, then you're thinking about it, and it's going to be, whereas you and I talked about this before the show.
You can get this done for less.
You can get it done for less. But if retail,
Retail $2,500 to $3,500.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you work with an electrician on a regular basis, well, you probably don't need this advice. But if you don't work with an electrician on a regular basis and you reach out to somebody who was referred to you, don't be surprised if that, by that sticker price of $2,600. It's fairly common, you know, unless you're putting your electrician to work on a regular basis, you're probably not going to get a sweet discount, you know.
Absolutely.
So that's just one of those things that most people, if you're new to the business, you don't even realize that that's an issue.
No, because they think, oh, look, the lights come on, everything works. Why would I need to spend money and replace that? And I'm the same way. A condo that I did, just that I was keeping as an Airbnb, I think this one's like 3 years ago. I'm like, oh, I don't need to replace that breaker box. It's going to be fine. You know, everything will work. I just want to do everything, you know,
I want to make it pretty.
I want to make it pretty. And so really bust that out. And within, you know, I've got an electric fireplace and adding flat screen TVs. And this place never had a microwave that was over the range and all of that. This breaker box could not handle it.
And that's what it comes down to, is these breaker boxes, when they were put in, they weren't put in with all of the things that we now have, all the electricity we now draw for a household. That they're not set up, they're not built to
This thing couldn't
handle.
run the furnace.
Yeah.
So it was like if the air
Trip.
conditioning went on, trip. If the microwave was on and then somebody else turned on a TV, trip.
Yep.
So it ended up that 6 months into it, I actually replaced the entire breaker box because we just kept popping breakers.
Yep.
And I'm like, and then I went in and looked at it and I'm like, how did I really think that this was going to pass? This thing looks like it was built in the 50s. I'm like,
Yeah.
Can you even buy new breakers for this? I'm sure not.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, obviously not for the ones that aren't code anymore, but that was one of the things when I asked my electrician, hey, what are the new prices for just replacing a breaker box? And obviously it depends, because if it's in a closet, how hard is it going to be to move it to an outside wall? So, I mean, because they're going to have to move it out of a closet because that's no longer code. So where do we put it now? How much wiring are we going to need for that? But in addition to that, he's like, breakers are super expensive right now. Who knew?
Yeah, well, everything else is going up as well.
Not surprising. Yeah.
You know, in addition to the Federal Pacific boxes that you're going to see when you walk into, especially these older homes, one thing that you want to look out for are the outlets that are not grounded. The way you know if an outlet is grounded is it looks like it's got a little shocked emoji face, right? You've got two eyes and then a little mouth. That's a grounded outlet. Back in the 1950s, 1960s, all of the outlets, you'll run into them, that don't have that third little hole. They only have two. Well, you can't even plug in a lot of things. I mean, a computer wouldn't be able to plug into your office, your future office space, because it's not the right outlet. Now, the next question that everybody goes, well, does that mean I have to replace all of the wire around?
No, you can pigtail stuff. And pigtailing is pricey in itself, but I mean, those are options, and that just varies. That varies house to house, how old the house is, how many outlets do you have, all of that. So we're not going to throw a number out there for
Which
you.
we've been discussing what we've paid
yes.
in the past.
Yep.
But again, it's also going to depend on your electrician. And a lot of times when you're pigtailing, you know, I've paid $30 a receptacle to get those all upgraded and brought up to this millennia.
Exactly.
And so if you're talking about $30, you know, that's $120 for a smaller 10 by 10, 12 by 12 room, you know, because you're going to have one outlet on each wall. And then that's for bedrooms. And then how many living rooms do you have? So these costs will add up. Oftentimes, you know, I'll look and go, well, am I going to be replacing outlets anyways? Because once you paint, some of these outlets might be mix matched, they might be old.
They might have been painted over.
Right.
A lot of times, you know, just like the joints and the knobs and the everything just get painted over. So,
and you know, and JERLEIGH and I were discussing before the show. She's like, well, but the cost of this stuff, we're talking about like $3 in materials. And yes, that's true. You know, an actual switch or just an outlet that's, you know, not a GFCI outlet, but just a regular outlet,
yep.
you know, just a couple bucks, especially if you buy them in bulk. But it's more the time and the labor to get around to each of those. And so it's something that can't be forgotten.
No, it definitely needs to be added into the cost, especially when we're talking about the new investors out there. That's something that gets overlooked quite a bit. There is nothing more frustrating. Well, one, that's how you know somebody's cutting some corners, is I take a client through a house, or I'm viewing a house that's newly remodeled, and I walk in and it's all that pasty yellow-ish tinted receptacles and light switches and all that, or the light switch doesn't match the cover, and you're like, oh, I see what you did here.
Yeah.
You just saved yourself about, you know, $1,000 just skimping on these little things. But that complete picture of a beautiful house doesn't come together without that attention to detail.
So, and you need to realize that when you're doing a flip and it's an older home, you know, it's that 1,500 square foot, 3-bedroom, 1.5 or 2-bathroom home. Yeah, you need to budget in an extra $1,000 or so to make sure that all of your switches and face plates look great, on top of making sure that your breaker box is new and modern. So if you're doing a house that's really 80s or older, 1980s or older, which the likelihood is if you're flipping an older home.
Absolutely.
You need to budget in, okay, I'm going to be spending somewhere in the range of $2,500 to $3,500 for a new breaker box and breakers. And in addition to that,
especially if it's in a closet.
Especially if it's in a closet, and really that's going to be the $3,500 because you're going to have to move that. And then you've got to worry about, okay, are all of my runs going to reach that new area that I'm taking it? So there's a lot to keep in mind there when you're
looking at the electrical. But at least that gives you like some ballpark. You know, that's what we're talking about today. That's what we talked about on our other 3 segments with the HVAC, the foundation, and the roofing, because these are all big ticket items that can add up super quick. But you need to have that ballpark before you ever even walk into the house. And like you said, 1980 or older, go ahead and assume that maybe you might have some electrical issues and add that into your budget, into your little black book of repairs possibly needed before you ever even go on that appointment.
right. And so, you know, 1,500, 2,000 square foot home, just assume, hey, yeah, I'm probably going to be at the $4,500 range, and that's just to start. That's not putting in can lights. That's not putting in ceiling fans. That's not putting in any new light fixtures whatsoever. All of those will, of course, bring your price even higher.
It starts to stack up quickly. But all that considered, make sure you check out your house beforehand, know how old it is, have it in your brain. Anything older than 1980 might possibly have a Fed pack or one of them that are related. And
keep an eye out for those old outlets that aren't grounded.
Exactly. And that pretty much sums up our electrical tips of the day. Hopefully that helps you with everybody estimating their repair costs out there. If you have any questions or comments, please let us know. And like and subscribe our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We'd love to hear from you guys. I'm JERLEIGH Thompson with Texel Real Estate and Real Estate Reformation.
And I'm KRISTIN GERST with Capricorn Mortgage Investments.
Thanks for watching the Divas.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.